Hello, everyone. Welcome to this radcast of the Guy, Fawkes, and Jamen Show. Today, I want to welcome back Guy and Fawkes and welcome all of our viewers. And we're going to jump right in. I'll just take the microphone for starters and jump right in. We were talking last time about transforming from this view of self and separation and individuality and property and this extrema that we've ended up in that realm. And we're talking about how do we get back to before the fall, when we were much more united. I would simply say united. And so philosophers have been thinking about this and writing about it for a long time, and I would put that in the realm of thinking our way into a new way of action. And we're about to explore a realm of acting our way into a new way of thinking. But first, I want to see if Fawkes or Guy has anything to say preliminarily. Going on mute.
Well, it has echoes of Marx when he said, philosophers have hitherto only interpreted the world. The point is to change it.
Exactly. Alrighty. Well, without further ado, then jump in anytime, gentlemen. I'm just going to do a screen share for maximum 3-4 minutes and just show some of these concepts that are part of our efforts to act our way into a new way of thinking. And so in terms of, we talk about transformations in the mode of production of the global economy. We are pioneering a new standard for the global economy, we within the context of Radish, and it's open to everyone to join, is we're building a compassionate economy. And the standard is that of a certified compassionate company. What's a certified compassionate company? A company that donates 100% of its profits to ending world hunger, after paying all its bills, of course. And that company must be socially transformational and ecologically regenerative in everything they do. This first bullet is what begins to transform ownership. And we'll see the power of this standard, the potential of it in a moment. But first, I wanted to introduce, so all profits going to eradicate hunger. Where specifically is that money going? And one of the models that we're pioneering is that of the community cafe, turning food into a basic human right. Not just any food, food that's sourced from ecologically regenerative, what we call regenerative agricultural networks, regenerative agriculture, holistic land management. So this we see as a crucial beginning of the transformation. And we've turned this into a virtuous cycle, which we call the Hungerless Games, where certified compassionate companies donate their profits to ending hunger through community cafes and other platforms, thus inspiring a global movement and a new story about how a certain segment of humanity is making this happen, ending world hunger, bringing people together, turning food into a basic human right. And so you might say, well, this is all great in theory, but how are you actually going to get this standard into the global economy? And the answer is one company at a time, starting with the pioneering company Sato Hemp of Japan, led by our brother Takuya Sato, who is the hemperor of Japan and the bearer of the longest legacy of hemp in the world, going back many generations. So we see this whole cycle of the Hungerless Games, Community Cafe, Triple C, pioneered by Sato Hemp, as helping to instigate and orchestrate a new level of thinking through transforming our actions. We are acting our way into a new level of thinking. And with that, I'll stop screen sharing and go back to video so we can turn it into that Harlem Globetrotter-like conversation where we're just passing the ball around. So back to you, gentlemen.
Well, that you bring up a good point, and I'm gonna bring in an example that might seem trite. I live on a homestead in Belize that is shared with 8 adults, and perhaps more in the future, maybe different ones, maybe even less people in the future. And one of the things that we've been trying to model and act upon is compassion for each other. If you spend any amount of time with the same number of people, with the same people, rather, over time, there are differences that arise, right? So John always leaves the toilet seat up, or Mary always leaves dirty dishes on the counter, or blah, 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 whatever. And so what we've recently done after living together for almost a year is decide we're gonna take the most fundamental approach to compassion with each other. And that starts with saying good morning to every single person every morning. It seems like such a little trite thing, but it turns into such a big thing that us treating each other with kindness and with compassion through those simple little acts turns into thinking about kindness and compassion all day, every day for each other. And then obviously the intention is to expand that to the human community as well. And already 2 weeks into this effort act, each day with kindness towards each other, it's already obvious that this is turning into something much sweeter than I originally imagined. It's so small, and yet already it has grown so big.
Beautiful, beautiful. You know, before passing it off to Fawkes, I just wanted to comment that these seemingly small things that, like you're saying, Guy, that can then inspire and cascade into much bigger things. When we pioneered the first community cafe in Southern California, we put together a plan and did it in like less than a month, and with all of its imperfections and everything. And yet at the opening, at the Grand Parade of Lights in Rosamond, California, where we fed the whole community, it all came together, the volunteers and everything, it just worked. And people were saying, a lot of them in Spanish, "Esto es un milagro." When are you this is a miracle. When are you going to do this again? And so really, I think we're seeing kind of like early glimpses of the utopia that is our birthright. And that is what emerges when we simply start coming together from a place of compassion, unity, and love and stewardship for our beautiful garden that we've inherited and have been destroying over the last century plus. Back to you, Fawkes, and let's keep it rolling. Wonderful.
That's a beautiful example, because sometimes, maybe most of the time, it's the simple things that we don't do, right? And there's a cumulative effect, and I think it's because it changes the whole dynamic, and frankly, if we employ that that model of just starting super small, but having it build towards something big and beautiful, the little things can and often do make a big difference. And that takes us back to the notion of the exponential growth, and we've talked before about the domino effect, although I don't know that we've talked about it on this show. But yeah, saying good morning with the people, with the housemates, with and in the case of the the planet, I don't know what that would be, but there's lots of things we could think about that would make a big difference. That's within every one of our power to do. Going back to Guy's point about taking personal responsibility for making a difference.
And by the way, I'm not saying this is going to change the world. I'm saying I'm saying it already has. It has changed my world, and the world we experience as individuals, for the most part, is pretty small, isn't it? I mean, we're surrounded by relatively few people on relatively small pieces of property, pieces of land, and sometimes we go beyond those. But for the most part, I'm guessing that most of us spend, 50%, 80%, maybe 90% of our time within 2 city blocks, within 200, 300 yards of where we wake up in the morning. The exception is when we go to work. Okay, so now we spend 90% of our time in 2 locations instead of in 1 location. And if we act with the same intention with the people at work as we do with the people at home, then we are changing the world at a time. And it's those little worlds added up that turn us into the E.F. Schumacher version of the small world writ large. That's where we're headed. That's what we're trying to do here, after all, is make for a better world for ourselves and for others.
Wow. This is so beautiful and inspiring. I forgot to say good. Let's institute that practice here. Good morning, Guy. Good morning, Fawkes.
Good morning, gentlemen.
It's actually evening here, but
good evening, Fawkes. Good morning, Jay.
Good morning, Guy and Jamen.
Wonderful. You see, it is changing the world, because now from going from that 8-person community in the homestead, it's now expanded to this apparently 3-person community, but of course we're opening up our community to everyone. And I say to all of our viewers, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are, and welcome. And what I believe, the way that's occurring to me, and Guy, you may be speaking for all I know, but you're a little bit blocked out there. So just jump in when you can. But for me, saying good morning, everyone saying good morning to each other, it's acknowledgement. It's acknowledgement of the unity that's there that we often forget. And it's, I believe you extrapolate those 2 words, and it's, hey, let's make this a good morning for all of us, right? We're all in this together.
Right, and it's simple, and it's civil, and it's nice, and it's kind, and it pays off immediately and over the long term. So then ratcheting up, where do we go from there? Where do our individual actions played out in our small communities or larger communities in the workplace, in conversations such as this one, where do they go? Well, I'm not sure we can answer that question, but we certainly can answer the question of where we wind up if we don't take those acts, because that's where we've been for the century of the self. That's where we've been for the last 100 years, is completely self-absorbed, completely focused on me and mine and what I have and what I need to get from you. And it has led us down this path of utter disaster at the level of society, at the level of culture, in very, very many cases, at the level of individuals that are my brothers and sisters. What right? By what right are we here? At the very edge of the abyss for humanity as a result of utter insanity. By what right?
Yeah, and building off of your possibly rhetorical question, where do these conversations go? Where do we go from here? My short, cute answer is these conversations go viral all around the planet. And because what we're starting here, though it may feel a little insignificant, especially as we haven't published any of these episodes yet, I think this does have the potential to really become a planetary conversation, because for so many reasons. I mean, it is vital for our very survival. And as people are waking up to the ecological planetary devastation that we've been wreaking on the planet, I believe that it will just become more and more obvious that something like this needs to happen. The shift at the city council meeting yesterday, where the Seattle City Council historically voted to sign on to the Paris Accord in light of the federal government's abdicating responsibility and pulling back from it. There was a major shift there. There was a kid there who was under 10 years old who got up to the microphone and said, you know, y'all from the current grown-up generation, you're leaving a destroyed world for us to pick up the mess. So these shifts are happening, and since we're staring down the barrel of an ice-free Arctic, possibly this summer, I would say likely this summer, I think we're going to start to see some of the cataclysmic, cascading destruction spread around the planet. And that's really, I think you're going to see a mass awakening. And that's where I think this cultural transformation, this spiritual transformation of humanity that we're, you know, playing with here on Guy Fawkes and Jamen, I think we're going to see that spread. Not necessarily, you know, where we'll be the epicenter of it, but there will be a center, and this conversation can go nowhere but outward and expand and include. Going on mute. Thank you.
And I don't think we are necessarily interested in us being the center of attention or us being the center of this movement. We're not interested in our personal ego and our personal ownership of these ideas. That defies the whole point for us being here and having this conversation. So I want to be clear about that. This isn't about us in the smaller senses of the Guy Fawkes and Jamen and the Radcast. It isn't about us at all. It's about us in the much greater sense, the one that doesn't identify other as being different from me, doesn't identify others as others, to put it simply.
Exactly. It's beautiful. I feel the transformation happening within me as we get more connected, and as this community that we're part of expands and more people join. More people have been joining Radish and joining the conversation. So for me, it's just utterly transformational. Guy, you're on mute.
That's because sometimes I have nothing to say.
Very good, very good.
I know it's a rare occasion.
Well, you know, it's okay to have nothing to say. I think, you know, one of the artifacts of our hyper-individualist, accumulate as much as you can, as fast as you can culture is we haven't really had much of a space for silence, right? Somebody's ego has always got to be, you know, accumulating or producing or taking credit for something.
In addition, we have this idea hammered into us by this culture that we're not really human beings. We're humans doing. We're constantly doing, and looking to shine in the light. So maybe making a little room for quiet, making a little room for being instead of doing isn't such a bad idea.
And listening instead.
Yeah, I just want to acknowledge we are pioneering a new culture here. What we're doing together, just like at the homestead there in Belize, Guy, you guys are pioneering new practices, a new culture of interconnectedness, compassion, caring, and being with each other. I just want to acknowledge we're doing that here as well.
And again, I want to respond to the question, will it work? Yes, it's already working. It's working for us. Will it work for you? Only to the extent you allow it. Only to the extent that you participate. Will it, quote, save the world? It depends on how big you want to define that world. It depends upon how big you want to define the temporal span. Does it save your world for a few moments? If it does, isn't that enough? Isn't that why we're here, for these moments? Isn't that what we remember in the end, as we slide into our own personal abyss, those few moments that we created something bigger than ourselves, that we created something of profound joy for us and the people around us? What better life than a life of service toward the common good, towards the greater good?
Good. Shall we call it an episode?
Well, we got a few more minutes if we wanted to use them. We could just hang.
Sometimes it's better to not say anything and let people think you're an idiot than to open your mouth and remove all doubt. No, I don't think we need to stretch this for the purposes of making it fit 28 minutes or whatever. I think this is a convenient stopping point.
Wonderful. Wonderful. All righty. Well, thank you, gentlemen. Thank all of us, and thanks all of you, our audience, for watching. Let's all become one and make this happen. Make the utopia reality. That's my final 2 cents. All right. Great hanging with y'all, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the next one.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.